2 Chronicles Chapter Summaries, 1-36. Published by Vise. Delving into the book of 2 Chronicles, we encounter the fascinating history of the kings of Judah, their triumphs and failures. These 2 Chronicles chapter summaries will serve as your guide, offering a concise overview of each ruler's reign, providing insights into their faith, leadership, and the lasting impact they left on their kingdom. When you are done reading here, you may also want to check out our complete list of Bible chapter summaries for every book of the Bible. Book of 2 Chronicles Summary by Chapter. Chapter 1. Solomon's Preparations for the Temple. This chapter opens with Solomon's ascension to the throne of Israel. He strengthens his position by forming an alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and marrying his daughter. Solomon demonstrates his wisdom through a prayer to God, requesting not for riches but for wisdom to rule justly. Impressed by his request, God grants Solomon not only wisdom but also immense wealth and honor. Following this, Solomon embarks on preparations for building the magnificent temple as envisioned by his father, King David. Chapter 2. The temple's construction begins. This chapter details the specific plans and preparations for building the temple. Solomon secures skilled workers from Tyre, led by the experienced craftsman Hiram, in exchange for provisions. He establishes a vast labor force, including conscripted Israelites and skilled foreign workers. The chapter meticulously outlines the dimensions and materials used for the construction, highlighting the immense scale and grandeur of the planned structure. Chapter 3. The completion of the temple. After 7 years of construction, the temple is finally completed. This chapter describes the intricate details of the inner sanctuary, including the Ark of the Covenant, golden cherubim, and other sacred objects. The chapter also depicts the dedication ceremony, filled with sacrifices, music, and celebrations, demonstrating the significance of the temple as a symbol of God's presence among the Israelites. Chapter 4. The temple furnishings and sacrifices. This chapter focuses on the various furnishings and utensils placed within the temple, including the altar of burnt offering and the bronze sea, used for ceremonial washing. It also describes the numerous sacrifices offered during the dedication ceremony, signifying atonement and devotion to God. The chapter further emphasizes the temple's role as a central location for worship and religious rituals. Chapter 5. The glory of God fills the temple. This chapter recounts a dramatic event following the dedication ceremony. The cloud of God's glory fills the temple, demonstrating God's acceptance and presence within the newly constructed structure. Solomon, acknowledging this powerful moment, humbly offers a prayer of dedication and expresses gratitude for God's faithfulness. Chapter 6. Solomon's Prayer of Dedication. This chapter features Solomon's lengthy prayer dedicated to God during the temple ceremony. He acknowledges God's covenant with Israel, expresses his hope that the temple will serve as a place for prayer and forgiveness, and recognizes God's sovereignty over the nation's future. The prayer reflects Solomon's faith and underscores the temple's intended purpose as a center for worship and connection between God and the Israelites. Chapter 7. Fire from Heaven and Sacrifices. Following Solomon's prayer, fire descends from heaven and consumes the sacrifices offered on the altar. This dramatic event is understood as a sign of God's acceptance and further reinforces the significance of the temple as a sacred space. The chapter also describes abundant additional sacrifices offered during the dedication festivities, reflecting the people's devotion and desire for God's favor. Chapter 8. The Feast of Tabernacles and Solomon's dismissal of the people. This chapter concludes the account of the temple dedication by detailing the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, a joyous festival commemorating the Israelites' deliverance from Egypt. The chapter describes joyous celebrations and blessings bestowed upon the people. Finally, Solomon dismisses the people to return to their homes, entrusting them to follow God's commandments and experience his continued blessings. Chapter 9. God's appearance and conditions for continued blessing. This chapter shifts the narrative, focusing on a significant revelation from God to Solomon. In a dream, God appears to Solomon and reiterates his conditional covenant with Israel. God promises continued prosperity and security if the people remain faithful to him and follow his commandments. However, he warns of consequences and potential destruction if they turn away from him. This chapter emphasizes the ongoing responsibility of the Israelites to uphold their covenant with God. Chapter 10. The Queen of Sheba visits Solomon. This chapter focuses on a visit from the Queen of Sheba, who has heard of Solomon's wisdom and wealth. She arrives in Jerusalem with a vast entourage and tests Solomon with riddles and questions. Impressed by his wisdom and the magnificence of the temple, the queen acknowledges the truth of the reports she had heard and expresses admiration for Solomon's reign. This chapter showcases Solomon's reputation for wisdom and highlights the international recognition of his achievements. Chapter 11. Solomon's Splendor and Downfall. This chapter details the sources of Solomon's wealth and grandeur. He acquires vast quantities of gold and ivory through trade agreements and engages in large-scale construction projects, including his own palace and other structures. However, the chapter also begins to hint at potential problems. Solomon marries many foreign wives, who introduce the worship of false gods. This foreshadows the consequences of straying from his initial commitment to God. Chapter 12. Rehoboam and the Divided Kingdom. Following Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam ascends the throne. However, the people of Israel, burdened by heavy taxes and harsh labor imposed by Solomon, approach Rehoboam with requests for relief. Rehoboam's refusal to lighten their burden sparks discontent and rebellion. The 10 northern tribes split from the southern kingdom, establishing the kingdom of Israel with Jeroboam as their king. This chapter marks the beginning of the divided kingdom period in Israel's history. Chapter 13. War between Judah and Israel. This chapter depicts the immediate conflict between the newly formed northern and southern kingdoms. Rehoboam leads the southern kingdom of Judah into battle against Jeroboam and the northern kingdom of Israel. However, God intervenes through a prophet, reminding the Israelites of their shared heritage and forbidding them from fighting each other. This chapter highlights the potential dangers and consequences of the division. Chapter 14. Abijah's Victory and Reign. This chapter focuses on the reign of Abijah, Rehoboam's son, who ascends the throne of Judah. Abijah confronts Jeroboam and the northern kingdom in a decisive battle, seeking to reclaim control over the entire Israelite nation. Abijah delivers a speech, appealing to the historical covenant and God's presence on his side. Despite being outnumbered, Abijah and the southern kingdom achieve a significant victory, solidifying their position. Chapter 15. Asa's Reforms and Victories. This chapter narrates the reign of Asa, Abijah's son, who becomes king of Judah. Asa displays his commitment to God by removing idols and promoting religious reforms. He enjoys relative peace and prosperity during his reign, engaging in successful military campaigns against the invading Ethiopians. The chapter emphasizes the positive outcomes associated with faithful leadership and adherence to God's will. Chapter 16. Asa's Dependence on Man Instead of God. This chapter recounts a setback in Asa's reign. Facing an attack by the powerful Aramean king Baasha, Asa, instead of relying on God, forms an alliance with the king of Aram. This action displeases God, who sends a prophet to rebuke Asa for his lack of trust. This chapter serves as a cautionary tale, highlighting the importance of relying on God in times of need. Chapter 17. The prophet Hanani's Rebuke and Asa's Repentance. Following his reliance on foreign alliances, King Asa faces another message from the prophet Hanani. The prophet rebukes Asa for his lack of faith and warns of consequences. Asa initially reacts with anger but eventually acknowledges his mistake and displays genuine repentance. He strengthens the fortifications of Judah and removes remaining idols, demonstrating renewed commitment to God. Chapter 18. Jehoshaphat's Reign and Alliances. This chapter chronicles the reign of Jehoshaphat, son of Asa. He establishes alliances with other kingdoms, including the northern kingdom of Israel, and enjoys relative peace and prosperity. Jehoshaphat institutes religious reforms, appointing judges and promoting education in the law of the Lord. He also strengthens the nation's military preparedness. Chapter 19. Jehoshaphat's Victory and Reproof. This chapter details Jehoshaphat's encounter with a coalition of Moabite and Ammonite forces. Facing seemingly insurmountable odds, Jehoshaphat leads the people in prayer and praises God for deliverance. Through a strategic maneuver and divine intervention, the enemy forces are defeated. However, Jehoshaphat receives a reminder from the prophet Jehu for forming a previous alliance with the wicked king Ahab of Israel. Chapter 20. Jehoshaphat's Prayer and Miraculous Victory. This chapter recounts another military challenge faced by Jehoshaphat. A vast enemy army threatens Judah, prompting Jehoshaphat to declare a national fast and prayer. In a heartfelt prayer, he acknowledges God's power and humbly pleads for deliverance. In response to their faith and dependence on God, the Lord miraculously intervenes through confusion and discord within the enemy army, leading to their defeat. Chapter 21. Jehoshaphat's Mistake and Consequences. Despite his generally successful reign, Jehoshaphat makes a critical mistake by forming an alliance with Ahab's son, King Ahaziah of Israel. This alliance leads Jehoshaphat to participate in a failed maritime venture, incurring losses and drawing a prophetic rebuke. The chapter highlights the potential consequences even for righteous leaders who make strategic errors in judgment. Chapter 22. Jehoram's Wicked Reign and Judgment. This chapter focuses on Jehoram, Jehoshaphat's son and successor. Jehoram follows a path of wickedness, influenced by his wife, Athaliah, daughter of the infamous Jezebel. He adopts the worship of false gods and murders his own brothers for the throne. As a consequence, the prophet Elijah delivers a message of judgment, warning of devastating consequences for Jehoram and his kingdom. Chapter 23. Athaliah's Seize of Power and Joash's Rescue. Following Jehoram's death, his wife, Athaliah, stages a coup, seizing power and killing all potential heirs to the throne except for the young prince Joash. However, Jehoshaphat's daughter, Jehosheba, secretly saves and hides Joash. 6 years later, with the help of the priest Jehoiada, Joash is revealed to the people and anointed king, overthrowing the wicked Athaliah. Chapter 24. Joash's Early Reign and Reforms. This chapter chronicles the initial years of Joash's reign, guided by the priest Jehoiada. They initiate religious reforms, encouraging the people to return to worshiping God and repairing the temple. The chapter highlights the positive influence of a wise advisor and the importance of religious leadership in promoting societal reforms. Chapter 25. Joash's Betrayal and Assassination. This chapter depicts a tragic turn of events in Joash's reign. After Jehoiada's death, Joash succumbs to pressure from his advisors and abandons his commitment to God. He orders the stoning of the prophet Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, for his warnings against the king's disobedience. This act of betrayal incurs God's wrath, and Joash is later assassinated by his own servants as punishment for his sins. Chapter 26. Amaziah's Reign and Victories. This chapter focuses on the reign of Amaziah, son of Joash. He seeks to redeem himself from his father's mistakes by leading the nation back to God. Amaziah enjoys military victories against the Edomites but faces defeat against the powerful northern kingdom of Israel. This chapter highlights the potential for renewed commitment to God, even after previous failings. Chapter 27. Uzziah's Reign and Accomplishments. This chapter details the reign of King Uzziah, son of Amaziah. Uzziah demonstrates strong leadership, leading Judah to a period of prosperity and expansion. He achieves significant victories against the Philistines and Arabians, strengthens the nation's borders, and promotes economic growth. He undertakes significant construction projects, including fortifying Jerusalem's walls and establishing other structures. Uzziah's accomplishments solidify his reputation as a successful and powerful king, but the chapter concludes with a hint of future troubles, mentioning that, in the latter years of his reign, God afflicted him with a skin disease. Chapter 28. Uzziah's Fall from Grace and Jotham's Rise. King Uzziah, initially known for his successful reign, succumbs to pride and attempts to perform priestly duties reserved for the Levites. He is struck with a skin disease for his transgression and eventually removed from public life. His son, Jotham, assumes some of the responsibilities and demonstrates capable leadership, focusing on internal improvements and strengthening Judah's infrastructure. Chapter 29. Jotham's Reign of Reform and Stability. Jotham officially ascends the throne upon his father's illness and continues his path of responsible leadership. He prioritizes internal reforms, building cities, strengthening fortifications, and promoting economic development. Jotham's reign serves as a period of relative stability and prosperity for Judah. Chapter 30. Hezekiah's religious revival and Passover celebration. Following Jotham's death, Hezekiah becomes king and embarks on a significant religious revival. He initiates the destruction of idols associated with false gods, repairs the temple, and encourages widespread participation in the Passover celebration, fostering national unity and a renewed focus on God. Chapter 31. Hezekiah's administrative reforms and centralization. Recognizing the importance of supporting the temple and religious activities, Hezekiah implements administrative reforms. He establishes a centralized system for collecting tithes and offerings, ensuring resources are directed towards the temple's upkeep and the support of religious personnel. Chapter 32. The Assyrian threat and Hezekiah's faith-based deliverance. Judah faces a formidable threat as the powerful Assyrian army threatens Jerusalem. Hezekiah demonstrates his faith in God by strengthening the city's defenses and trusting in God's protection. Through a miraculous intervention, the Assyrians are defeated, showcasing God's faithfulness and the power of prayer in times of crisis. Chapter 33. Hezekiah's illness and humility. Hezekiah experiences a serious illness, initially responding with pride and self-reliance. This response draws a prophetic rebuke, urging him to acknowledge his dependence on God. Hezekiah demonstrates humility by repenting and ultimately recovers from his illness, demonstrating the importance of acknowledging human limitations and relying on God's will. Chapter 34. Josiah's Reformation and Rediscovery of the Law. This chapter introduces Josiah, a young king who ascends the throne of Judah. Unlike his predecessors, Josiah demonstrates a sincere dedication to God. He initiates a nationwide campaign against idolatry, destroying pagan altars and removing any traces of false worship. During renovations at the temple, a long-lost scroll containing the Book of the Law is discovered. Upon hearing its contents, Josiah is deeply moved and humbled, recognizing the nation's past transgressions and God's rightful judgment. Chapter 35. Josiah celebrates Passover and institutes further reforms. Following the discovery of the law, Josiah leads the nation in celebrating a grand Passover feast, surpassing in scale any previous observance. He renews the covenant with God on behalf of the entire nation and institutes further reforms, ensuring adherence to the law and promoting faithful worship practices. This chapter emphasizes Josiah's commitment to restoring and renewing the covenant relationship between God and the people of Israel. Chapter 36. Judah's continued rebellion and destruction. Despite Josiah's efforts, the nation as a whole continues to rebel against God. Following Josiah's death, his successors fail to maintain his reforms, leading the nation back into idolatry and disobedience. The prophets relentlessly warn of impending judgment, but their messages are ignored. This chapter emphasizes the consequences of persistent disobedience and the ultimate fulfillment of prophetic warnings, culminating in the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem, the destruction of the temple, and the exile of the Israelites. The final chapter of 2 Chronicles concludes with a glimmer of hope, hinting at the possibility of future restoration after a period of exile, as prophesied by Jeremiah. However, the primary message of these chapters is a stark reminder of the consequences of disobedience and the importance of remaining faithful to God's covenant.